Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's John Frassinelli and the team here at STE. Thanks for tuning in again. Just wanted to start with a couple of things before I turn it over to Shannon and Fanula and Terry and Susan. Yesterday, Addendum 11 went out as part of our opening guidance. That's the mask guidance. There isn't a ton of information in there about the school meals program. We are trying to get another addendum out as soon as possible that will include some language around some specifics around use of masks and removal of masks for meals. So stay tuned for that. DPH is also putting together a frequently asked questions document, the third one in the series, to address that as well. We're working on the final details on that. But remember, go to our website, click on COVID resources. There's all of the addendums so far are listed there. And then below that are the first two FAQs that came out in partnership with DPH. So stay tuned for that. So just so you know, we share your frustration with the issuance of the press release on Monday with regard to the potential changes to the school food service operations to a summer through an SFSB or SSO model. We have been working around the clock to try to get some clarification on what that means for us. We also understand and feel your pain when it shows up on the news that anyone, anywhere, anytime, any kid, any place can get meals for free. We're trying to get something out, but you know that we have to comb through all of the details to make sure that we understand and we can tell you exactly what to expect. So, and what you're able to do, because we certainly don't want you to go down a path that you can't do and then not be able to be reimbursed for those goods. So, again, apologize for the delay. I'm sure you're hearing from everyone that you can just serve anyone anytime, but we're desperately trying to get that out. On the upside, if you're really bored on tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, I taped an interview last week with the Connecticut Public Radio station. It's on a show called Seasoned. So you can tune in. If you're really bored, you've got nothing else to do, you can chime into that. I gave you guys all the kudos and as well as kudos to our team and all of the work that you've done, and just sort of what to expect coming out. So maybe it will be helpful in dispelling some of the information that's out and providing some clarity on what to expect. Again, that happened on Friday of last week, so things that were in place on Friday are a little bit upside down right now. So thanks for all your work. I'm sure, especially for all of you, but for the folks who have already started, we'd love to hear what's been happening in your schools and what we can share with the rest of everyone else on this call to know what they can expect and what things surprised you. Also, for everyone else, we're really interested in knowing what your questions are about everything, but in particular about what you've seen with the press release and the memos and the waivers that came out on Monday and Tuesday. So we're asking those questions of the feds, and we'd love to have you let us know what other questions you have so we can get some comprehensive guidance on that. So thanks, and with that, I will turn it over to Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. So welcome to the Town Hall series, where we promise you will never be bored working in these USDA child nutrition programs. So just to review what John said, you know, the timing has been less than ideal on some of this, and so we really, as John said, we are in that same boat with you, where the press release comes out prior to the waivers and then prior to the state agency being able to get those, review those, and being able to ask those questions from the USDA Northeast Regional Office, who then most of the time needs to go back to headquarters with some questions. What I can tell you that is looming on the horizon is that there is a set of questions and answers coming out from USDA that is currently in clearance. So hopefully we will all get some guidance. They are well aware that many schools, not just in Connecticut, but across the nation, have already begun operations. This is a decision that was made very quickly and really was marketed in a way that doesn't necessarily take into account a lot of the operational details that you have to handle when you administer these programs. So we are well aware of most of those details, and we want to hear from you also. We're going to open this town hall up. Typically, we have you type in your questions and we work through those as we go. We're going to ask Michelle, our gracious hostess for these town halls, to add the hand feature, so you'll be able to raise your hand and actually speak to us. I can promise you for most of the questions you likely have on these new waivers, we have already likely submitted a lot of those questions to USDA and are awaiting guidance, or have been told that those are on the Q&As that will be issued. Once those Q&As from USDA are issued, we will also be working on updating our Connecticut specific Q&A so that we can make sure that what USDA issues that fits the entire nation is also something that applies here in Connecticut. So that's something to always keep in mind, that when you see these national press releases, you see these national waivers, each state, it has to implement these programs slightly differently because of our landscape. And so that is something that we will be up against here in Connecticut. So I cannot emphasize enough that even when you read this national language around the waivers, that does imply you can just move forward with them without notifying us. That is not the case. There is still a process where we will have to collect the information from you, and you will have to let us know what you plan to do. So prior to me getting into what these 9 new nationwide waivers that were released on Monday, what they may do, and again, we really don't have concrete answers from USDA yet on some of the things that I know you will have questions about. But what I do want to say is that the waivers that were issued under the current congressional authority that expires at the end of this federal fiscal year, which is September 30th. The funding for these programs runs out in December, on December 31st. So the nationwide waivers that were issued to potentially allow school food authority sponsors to offer their meals during the school year through either the school breakfast program, national school lunch program, or potentially the seamless summer option of the national school lunch program or the summer food service program. Those would only be able to operate through December 31st or until the federal funding runs out. We have no way to predict when that could be. It could be much sooner than December 31st. I want to say that because you have two very important documents as handouts for this town hall that I want you to look at to download. One of them is the waiver application for the current flexibilities that we can allow you to opt into for this school year under the school breakfast program and the school lunch program. Those waivers, you need to opt into those prior to September 15th. What's even more important than these waivers is having your school breakfast program and national school lunch program application documents into us by September 15th. We cannot approve any flexibilities without you actually having an approved agreement on file with us, and those are due on September 15th. If you do not recall seeing that email from us a couple of weeks ago, certainly let us know. We can re-forward that information, but that is a very important start to any of this. So at any point in time, whether you elect into some of the flexibilities that we may or may not be able to allow through these summer meals programs, you will at some point during the year, as it stands, be operating the school breakfast and school lunch program. So that waiver application, again, to reiterate what we spoke about last week, that is for if you intend to operate any of those flexibilities through your school breakfast or school lunch program at any point in time through the school year, at any school that you are serving these meals to under your sponsorship agreement, you need to elect into those waivers. That does not require you to have to implement them at each school. We are moving forward with making available, with working with our technology company to update the child nutrition program's online application and claiming system so that you will be able to, at a later date, enter in more specific details on what is happening at each individual site. So please know that will be coming. We want to keep that as consolidated and as administratively streamlined for you as possible, which is why we are working very hard to make that available in the online system you're used to. But that does mean that an entire module has to be created, implemented, and tested prior to going live with that. But what we do need to know is what flexibilities you will be opting into for this year. Along with that handout for the general waiver applications is the meal pattern application, meal pattern waiver application. As you may recall from last town hall, we talked about the court decision that vacates the decisions to create additional flexibilities from the 2012 meal patterns. This meal pattern waiver application is slightly different than the ones we were able to make available to you prior to this, which were on a month-to-month basis. And the previous ones we were only allowed to authorize meal pattern waivers for those meal pattern disruptions that were caused by a supply chain disruption due to COVID-19. This meal pattern waiver application allows us to approve you for a slightly longer time period, and it also could help address any challenges you have with meeting that 2012 meal pattern requirement that we were really just informed of. I know Susan Fiore on our staff is furiously working to try and update our many documents on the meal patterns to make sure that you know what those 2012 meal pattern requirements are, so that if you have your menus and your food ordered and everything in place, you may not need this application, but I wanted to point that out. I'm going to turn to my staff just very briefly in case I missed anything on the actual sponsorship agreement piece. That's also due on September 15th.
Yeah, no, I would just add that the email went out August 14th from the Connecticut State Department of Education Child Nutrition's email. So if you're looking for that email, it's August 14th, and it has step-by-step instructions to update the online agreement for 2021 and the applicable reporting, the financial report and the food safety inspection. So please read that thoroughly and the attachments, and you'll be able to get that in to get you approved for 2021. And then, as Shannon mentioned, the applicable USDA waivers that go to the CN permanent agreement web email. That's it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Vanilla. So I'm going to very briefly provide an overview of what the nationwide waivers really, the topic areas they covered. We are not, as I said, we've submitted about 6 pages worth of questions to the USDA on how exactly this is going to be administered. I've been on frequent calls with the states in our region who are also very concerned with in a lot of the same areas that we are, and how we're going to set this up for success and make sure that you are able to opt into the flexibilities that we can allow. So one of the waivers is pretty technical in nature, and that's around what's known as closed enrolled sites for a summer food service program. I'm not going to go into the details on that. If you are a summer food service program sponsor, you are already going to know really what this means. And what it does is it allows us to not have to make you collect all of the various income eligibility forms for closed enrolled sites if it's located in areas that are area eligible. Not going into that one too much more. Another really technical one is also around summer food service program in regard to the first week site visit. I'm not going to go into too much details on that because that won't necessarily answer a lot of your questions you have for this current school year and how you're operating at this moment. So meal service times, those flexibilities were intentionally now included for both summer food service program and the seamless summer option of the National School Lunch Program. With that meal service time waiver one, it's a little bit weird. So we actually discussed this after our last town hall, and in terms of what the terminology really waiver means. So when we have this set of regulations that we have to provide food through, and we have to follow these rules and regulations. And by we, I mean all of us, whether it's a state agency, a sponsor, a site, however. What a waiver does is it allows you to kind of set aside some of those rules that are in standard operating regulations and say, for this set time period, we can operate outside of that specific rule or regulation. So it's a little bit of a weird terminology when you're applying for a waiver. Really what it is it's saying you're looking for a little flexibility out of how the programs typically have to operate. And so when we say that the meal service times are part of this nationwide waiver, what that means is that typically under school breakfast, school lunch, seamless summer option, and the summer food service program, there are certain time restrictions for when you can serve particular meals and how much time has to elapse before you can serve the next meal. What this waiver does is allows us as a state agency to say you don't have to serve meals within that regulated time frame, and you don't have to have a certain amount of time elapsed prior to you being able to serve those meals. You do have to pick a time you're going to be distributing those meals, so that doesn't waive it all together and say you can do it anytime you want. You still have to pick those serving times because we still need to have the program integrity and accountability around that. So the reason that I wanted to go into that a little bit is because this meal service time waiver is what has allowed us since March through these various programs to allow you to serve potentially breakfast and lunch at the same time for the next day to a student instead of having them have to take breakfast, wait a couple hours, come back, pick up lunch. It also is what has allowed us to authorize you to serve multiple days at a time. So if you want to give a household those meals for Tuesday and Wednesday when they're going to be remote learning, the meal service time is part of what allows you to do that. The other waiver that allows you to do that is the non-congregate. Typically in regulation, these programs are meant to be meals that are served and eaten together, so congregate. Whereas now we are able to allow you to opt into feeding in a way where kids can take those meals off site and not have to eat them together. The parent guardian waiver is also, it's a waiver of having to have the physical presence of that child at that meal distribution. So just wanted to cover some of those basics, and that we speak in regulatory language a lot, and we just want to make sure that we're clear and very straightforward in what those things actually mean, so we don't get too caught up in the lingo around these. So there's also flexibility in one of the nationwide waivers issued on Monday that is around offer versus serve for SFSP. Again, this is a pretty technical one. I'm not going to go into too many details on what this means. We will be providing more guidance around the offer versus serve decisions within the various different programs that you may be able to choose from for this year. So more on that coming. It's pretty complex when it comes down to the meal pattern. Our team knows it way better than I do. So we've been able to come up with some good examples that we will hopefully be able to issue those soon to help you consider whether that's a waiver that you need. The area eligibility extension nationwide waiver is one of the big ones that we have a lot of questions around, and I'm sure you do too. So please know that we really want to hear your questions on that one as well. Area eligibility is something that typically only exists with the summer food service program and the seamless summer option. It doesn't exist in the world of school breakfast and school lunch. Area eligibility is what allows a site to serve any child 18 and younger, not just kids in a specific defined group. And so the way that the waiver extension is written has some language in it that's a little bit conflicting and a little bit confusing. And so we are actively seeking very quickly and putting as much pressure as we can on USDA to provide some guidance, because that will be a critical piece for us to be able to determine what we can authorize you to do for this school year. Separate from the meal pattern waiver application you see is the handout here, is another meal pattern waiver application that is specific to the summer food service program and seamless summer option. Typically, seamless summer option is tied into the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. So oftentimes, the way that we look at that is that if there are flexibilities allowed through school breakfast and school lunch, that those typically will also be allowed in seamless. This set of nationwide waivers is a little bit unique in that it also specifically clusters seamless summer option as separate from the school breakfast and school lunch program. So that's definitely going to be a little bit of an administrative challenge for us to untangle within our systems and to be able to make sure that we are giving you the appropriate guidance. Another waiver, one of the waivers that was issued is also around extending the non-congregate, and that's specific to SFSP and SSO, and that goes through December 31st. There's another authorization for parent guardian pickup for summer food service program seamless summer option. So we believe the intent of the USDA was to align these when the decision was made that we might be able to allow you to operate these programs through December 31st or until the funding runs out. These other waivers, we believe, were intended to align the flexibilities within the school breakfast and school lunch program that we already have to also be mimicked in the summer food service program and seamless summer option. Unfortunately, some of the regulations are a little bit different in these two programs, and so it's not going to be as smooth and seamless as we would love to have it be. So we do have a couple other waiver requests that we need to write and get through USDA in order to align those better for you. And then the last was really to just, I think the waiver extension or the waiver number 56 was really to say that there are additional options now available to school food authorities. We are working very furiously to try and figure out exactly how we can get this information to you. We do not, we've asked USDA when these go into effect. There is typically the start date is when you see that date on the nationwide waiver, but that is also a question that is part of the questions and answers that USDA is developing, is what we've been told. And we are unable at this time to tell you what the actual start date, if it will be retroactive, if they will allow back to the beginning of the school year. Again, there are many states in the nation who already have gone back to school, who this is a really pressing question for them. And then we also need we're looking at our own system to try and figure out how, with all of these flexibilities, we can get our system to cooperate with these once we have some clarification on how these need to be implemented. So I know that very likely it probably inspired more questions than it did answer them. As I mentioned before, we are in this boat with you trying to figure this out. We are committed to making this year as successful as possible and making these meals as accessible as possible and as administratively streamlined as we can feasibly make it, with making sure that there's still program integrity. With that, Michelle, can you enable the hand raising feature, and then we can also look at if there's any questions that have been submitted. But
I've already enabled the hand raising feature, and I also put a message into the chat, but no one has raised their hands yet. So, but I believe there are some questions written in the question box. Oh, wait, I'll let you know if I see someone had their hand raised and then it went down. So why don't you check the questions and I'll let you know if anyone's in there.
Okay, sure. And this, just to let everybody know too, when we because we record these, we actually also generate a transcript. So whether you enter your question in the chat and the question box, or whether you ask it out loud, we will be able to keep that question so that we don't lose track of that. So if you don't see us furiously taking notes, that's because we are furiously taking notes without having to do that right now, since the webinar platform has that capacity. Okay. So So can the meal pattern waiver be submitted at a later time in the school year if we begin to experience issues with getting specific products? Absolutely. The meal pattern application waiver is now we have the authorization to be able to allow that. The previous versions, we only could do it a month at a time. And so we needed those in quickly. This, we have authorization through June 30th of 2021. So those applications should really be based on those supply challenges that you have throughout the year. I do want to clarify one thing that I forgot to mention on the meal pattern application we have here versus the meal pattern waiver that was issued on Monday. We were giving clarification from the USDA that the meal pattern application for school breakfast, school lunch is not, you cannot use that to implement one of the other meal patterns. So you will still, so for instance, some of you are very, want to be able to use summer food service program meal pattern instead of school breakfast or school lunch meal pattern. The meal pattern application that is attached here and through school breakfast, school lunch does not allow you to do that. What it can do is help you create those flexibilities that have been in place since 2012 that are no longer in place. So the meal pattern waiver allowance through SFSP and SSO will be different, and that that allows you to waive different items. So for instance, it might allow you to waive the requirement to offer at least 2 different options of milk with maintaining all other fluid milk requirements in effect. So there are going to be 2 different meal pattern applications because we are authorized to allow one thing for one meal pattern application and authorized for the other meal pattern waivers to let you to apply for other meal pattern flexibilities. And team 2, certainly feel free to jump in. I know that the technical language is not always my expertise area, and you know these programs backwards and forwards, and certainly jump in if you feel inspired to do so. So are there recordings of these webinars available? Yes, there are. If you go to our main website, you'll see the COVID-19 resources for families and educators. And if you go onto that page and scroll down, you'll see professional support series. And when you click on that, you will see, I'm pretty excited, really right at the top is a child nutrition programs button. And when you click on that, that's where you'll be able to find the recordings for these, along with the transcripts. Direct certification. How do we enter multiple meals for our free and reduced home students to cover all children in their household that are not in school yet? So this question, I'm not sure if these children are all enrolled in your school or if these are children who you would like to serve should you be able to choose the seamless summer option or summer food service program. So I'm going to encourage you to raise your hand and actually walk us through what your question is so that we make sure that we can fully understand it in case we have the answer or we may need to seek some additional guidance. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next question, but I encourage Jose to raise your hand and certainly talk with us. We are a friendly crew. I know we look awkward being here in our 4 tiles. We are getting very used to seeing each other this way, but certainly don't be shy. We want these to be useful to you, and if we don't know what you're thinking or have the conversation with you, that makes it very hard for us to know exactly what guidance we need to provide and what information we need to seek guidance from USDA on. So I'm moving on to the next question here. On the application for nationwide waivers form, which box should I select? This sounds like a choose your own adventure. So we have 7 students that get their breakfast, lunch delivered 5 days a week, and 1 student who sounds like they are both doing in-person and remote is getting their food on Tuesday and Thursday. Thoughts? Team, you wanna field this one, or would you want me to fumble through it? Go for it, Susan.
Yeah, I work with this school. This is one of my schools. So yes, so right. So this would be the mealtime waiver application, your non-congregate, and your parent pickup. You would check those three on the application box, because that would allow you to do what you've explained there for those students that aren't at school receiving meals.
Thank you. All right. So we have started school in my district already. I've submitted my waivers to the CNP agreement to allow parents, guardians to pick up meals, even though the waiver has not been approved yet. Megan, I would go ahead and continue operating as you have planned to operate. If we see any issues with that, we will certainly reach out to you to help get you back on track. But certainly don't, just because these are due on September 15th, it's very unlikely that you would not be approved for these very general waiver flexibilities. Our challenge is we need to get the information from the district so that we can report that to USDA. If there's a challenge, we will work with you to try and figure out how to resolve that, but don't let that approval for this general waiver application hold you up on being able to administer your programs. If you have questions at all about, is this model that I am choosing to move forward with going to fit within these flexibilities, that's when you absolutely want to reach out to us and tell us what you're thinking. One of the things I really want to encourage is I'm sure you can probably hear it in my voice if I haven't said it before, we are waiting for USDA guidance on everything that was issued on Monday. So we don't have an inside information. We don't have any information we're not sharing with you. As soon as we have information, we will absolutely get that out as fast as we possibly can. So please know that we are not withholding anything, and we all saw the press release issued at the same time as you did. So that is not typical. Typically, we do get the information at least a little bit ahead of time, but we also know that that was pretty shared across the board. So
I just want to add one thing. So for Region 15 and for everyone else, that's a great question. You're not waiting for us to approve and say move forward with these USDA waivers that are due in that we've already issued under NSLP and SBP. But just to reiterate what Shannon said, we put together those consideration items when implementing these USDA waivers under the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program for the three various models. So the in-person, hybrid, and 100% remote learners. So if you are having any challenges with meeting those items that we identified are areas to consider with these three different models, in implementing these waivers and meeting with the regulations, as Shannon said, that's when you'd want to reach out to your county consultant to walk through your particular operation and see that it in fact is meeting the regulations. Because I will say we are getting calls in or being made aware of situations that we really have to walk through some challenges and help sponsors, even with implementing the waiver, ensure that they're meeting the regulations.
Thank you, Camilla. So we have another question is, will all waivers be issued in one email? And I'm not sure that I fully understand that question. The waiver application that we have covers all of the current waiver flexibilities we are authorized to allow for school breakfast, school lunch. We need additional USDA guidance to know exactly what we can authorize for summer food service program and seamless summer option for this school year. Right now, we do not have the clarifications that we need in order to be able to make that available in an option yet. We fully understand schools are in, schools have started, you need to make your plans. USDA is also well aware of that, which is why I am trying very hard to remain optimistic that that question and answer document that's in clearance will make its way out the door sooner than later, which will allow us to be able to move forward quickly. We are preparing our documentation and our guidance already. And again, it's also, I guess this has all been kind of a choose your own adventure I'm trying to move away from the word fluid, so we'll use choose your own adventure as a similar meaning, but we are trying to get everything prepared that we can until we get those clarifications from USDA before we could release that. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, and I was just going to say, I mean, following on those lines, just like we did with the waiver application that we sent out on Friday, I mean, we are going to look at as much as we can to streamline the process into one application waiver form that you will have to fill in. Like, we're not looking to have you send us back 9 forms. So if there's any way we can combine what we need from you, we will condense it as much as we can so that we're not, you know, we're not sending you 10 emails and you have to send us back 10 forms. We don't have the capacity to track all of that and collect all that and manage all that. So we are looking at trying to streamline the process as much as we can going forward with what we've done, and also whatever it is that we have to do you know, for these new waivers.
Thank you. So our next question is, will the Department of Education require community eligibility provision districts or any district to feed all students if the area eligibility waiver is implemented, or is it optional? So this is a pretty complex question. Just to clarify for those of you who are new to CEP, the community eligibility provision is an option for districts that are eligible, and that is based off of your children who are directly certified for free meals. We have quite an extensive resource on that on our website. Certainly look into that if you can. And what that does is it allows every child, regardless of their income eligibility status otherwise, there's no income eligibility applications collected, and all children eat free to their household for both school breakfast and school lunch is the quickest summary I can give of CEP. And so the area eligibility waiver, again, is very specific to summer food service program and the seamless summer option. We currently do not have the answers that we need from USDA to be able to speak very specifically to how that will be implemented. The way that it is written is consistent with how it's been written in the past, which is inconsistent with how we are allowed to interpret it. So until we have in writing from USDA some clarification on how we can implement area eligibility, we're unable to answer that question in that specific way. We at the Department of Education would highly encourage you to try and make meals available to as many children as you can. Not only are these meals extremely critical for the households you are serving, they're vital to the educational achievement, to their social emotional well-being, and it's important to your bottom line. So we will encourage it. Right now, the only information we have from USDA around the school breakfast program and school lunch program is that if a district or if a sponsor chooses the non-congregate option, you must offer meals to all students. If you choose the congregate, in other words, you don't opt into the non-congregate, then you are not required to feed. You're not required to offer those meals to all children, since all children would not be able to bring those meals off site. The regular congregate rules would still apply. Area eligibility typically in summer meals does mean that any child 18 and younger must be served those meals. So that would include meals that are out, that would include serving meals to children 18 and younger, whether or not they are enrolled in any school that's under your sponsorship agreement. Will this new waiver allow, sorry, my scrolling is not all that great. Will this new waiver allow us to feed any child, or do they have to be enrolled in our school district? Also, will this new waiver allow us to serve weekend meals, also like we did in the spring? It's true, we don't have the answers on the area eligibility yet. As soon as we get that clarification, we will absolutely send that information out. But once we are able to allow summer food service program and seamless summer option, then yes, those two programs do allow sponsors to serve weekend meals. Keep in mind, these waiver authorities expire on December 31st or when the funding runs out. We do not know if USDA would need to give a timeline. So if they know that the funding might run out in a week, we don't know if we would be given a week's notice. We are unaware. This is very unprecedented times for us, for USDA. So please keep in mind that you should have your plans to quickly pivot into school breakfast, school lunch, regardless of if you choose SSO or SFSP once we're able to authorize that. Because if that money runs out prior to December 31st, you need to switch your operations into those school breakfast, school lunch programs. And if it does run through December 31st, you would still need to switch after that. Again, the waiver application, that's part of the handout. If you think in February of 2021, you might be needing to implement those flexibilities, select those options now to submit to us by September 15th. You don't want to be in the position of having to reach out to us the day before you need to implement these flexibilities to ask us to extend a deadline. Please opt into them if you think you'll use them at any point in the school year at any schools under your sponsorship agreement.
Shannon, we are obviously jumping back and forth to what we know and what we've issued for the USDA waiver, the application which is attached, and the meal pattern flexibility waiver, which we know and which we're giving you the guidance to complete your online agreement for the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. So I'm just, again, recapping that all of these questions asking about these potential waivers that were released on Monday, we have not given any further guidance on how to proceed with serving children who are not enrolled in your district. And you would need to wait for that in order to proceed with serving kids 18 and younger that are also not enrolled in your district under the summer food service program and SSO. Again, I just want to bring that back because we are really talking about two different groups here, what we know and those USDA waivers that we've released, and we're asking for information back. And I know you're doing a wonderful job saying if we get the green light to move forward with operating under summer, we may need to pivot quickly back to NSLP and SVP, so you should move forward. And we are again saying you should move forward because that is the direction we are giving you right now, because that is what we know, and we can approve you to serve meals under those programs.
Thank you, Camilla. Okay, so does Monday's seamless summer option waiver mean that we do not have to run our students through our point of service system? And if so, is that just virtual learners or does that cover in-school learners? So I think this is a great time to pause and talk about how your system is set up to ensure that there's no claiming of second meals, and how how just basically that works. And I can certainly jump in on the kind of hybrid between in-school and virtual if you'd like. But if any of my team members want to jump in on that, please feel free.
I'm talking too much. Anybody else? Terry, Susan?
Terry's pretending her unmute doesn't work. All right, I'll start. You guys jump in. So whether you are a CEP school, whether you're doing school breakfast, school lunch outside of that CEP provision, you need to have a system in place where you can make sure that you are counting and claiming your meals accurately. And that's true for any of the child nutrition programs. So the one thing that we do know and that we have been told by USDA is that within a school building, you will not have the option to run both programs. So we know that you will not be able to provide school lunch, school breakfast for your in-person learners, and at the same time serves your children who are coming to pick up for your remote learners out of SFSP or SSO. That's okay though, because if you run seamless summer option, you are still very close to running your school breakfast and school lunch programs, and the current waivers that we have the authorization to allow you to do under school breakfast and school lunch for non-congregate meal service times, parent pickups, should help with this type of a situation, but you do still need to make sure that you're counting and claiming appropriately And that does look a little bit different for CEP school districts, schools, and versus those who are not CEP. And that does, again, look a little different for SSO, SFSP. This is why I asked if you guys wanted to start. Jump in.
I'm ready now. I'm ready now to collected my thoughts. So well, we always want to encourage you to use your point of sale system, especially for those students in school, right? It's the fastest way sometimes to move them through, you know, and track them and consolidate those claims daily and at the end of the month. There are other ways that you can count those meals. So if you are allowed through these waivers to do the SSO at your site, and you may be feeding students at a much higher quantity, because you're going to have in-school kids, you may have distance learning kids coming to pick up meals, you may have some hybrid kids coming here or there. You can do other meal counting and claiming methods, but you have to make sure that, right, that your integrity of the program is there, that you're making sure that you're stopping second meals from happening. So it may look different for everybody's program. It may look different from site to site. So you kind of have to figure out what works best for you. When all possible, I think the POS system is going to be your best way for accountability of meals.
And just to add on to that, for SSO, you may be serving children, if we can move forward with this and you opt into that, and I think this is asking about SSO waivers, you may be serving children that are not enrolled in your school, because under SSO and SFSP, as you know, it's all children 18 and under. So your POS system, you need to look to see if that could support that as well. But many of the SSO sponsors, and I believe this sponsor, you'd be able to follow the regulations for counting and claiming under the seamless summer option. But making sure the integrity is there, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so this is a little bit further clarification from Jose. Thank you for typing that back in. So for direct certification for children who are at home, who their siblings might be receiving those free or reduced price meals through direct certification, and we're looking to provide meals for the whole household. If the student is not enrolled in school, how do we process their meals? Terry? I didn't know if it was like an auction.
I'll answer this one.
You're messing with me on that.
No, I'm not messing with you. Okay, just remember that meals are supposed to be offered for all children, not just free and reduced. When you're talking about direct certification, okay, and you're talking about kids at home, I think you're referring to students that are not enrolled in your school district, which is not where we are currently at as far as providing meals. So right now, you're providing meals for students that are enrolled in your school system, and you're not providing meals for children that are home that are not enrolled. And we will provide you with guidance once that happens. But right now, that's what we want you to focus on. And just remember that right now, it's for all children, free, reduced, and paid. And unless you're a CEP school, you're going to be counting them as such. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have another question around if we can use the summer meal count sheets.
Not now. Right now, we are moving forward and you're getting approved to operate under the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. But again, if you opt in and then you are going to be operating your programs under SFSP or SSO, the regulations around meal counting and claiming for those programs would be applicable. And as I mentioned, 18 years and younger for those two summer programs, you may be using a tally sheet, and that would be appropriate as long as you had some safeguards in place regarding serving meals with the intent of these programs, the 2 meals a day for each child under 18 and younger. Yeah.
And also, Shannon, I want to add that there are people that are on this call that are not familiar with what SSO is because they've never participated in the seamless summer option. They're not familiar with what the summer food service program is because they've never participated in that as well. But they know the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program well. And so we're going to try to provide you with some guidance to help you select what you want to do. because there are differences in those programs. And so you may be on this call and not familiar with some of the terms that we're talking about or the different aspects of these programs. So we will provide you with that guidance.
Great point. And just as a little recap, all of those school districts that operated under emergency feeding when your schools shut down in March would have either operated under the seamless summer option, which is an extension of the National School Lunch Program, or the summer food service program. But to Terry's point, and I think that for many of you that was new to operate under the seamless summer option. And again, it is under the National School Lunch Program, so a lot of the regulations are familiar, but we know we have a number of sponsors and some of you on the call today that did not feed during emergency feeding in March, April, May, June, July. So this is definitely something new. Good point, Terry.
Yeah. All right, Michelle, do we have any hands raised? I have my question boxes covering most of my screen.
No, we don't.
All right.
Don't be shy, people. Raise your hands. We'll
I think
call
it's
on you.
because usually we give out prizes for people who interact with us verbally, and we just have no way to do that virtually. So I don't
Terry
have
could
any
still
fun
throw, Terry,
pencils.
yeah, Terry could still throw a pencil in the air.
I could do that.
Please don't do it at your work computer. But so we do have another question here. Did you say that if we can, let me start that one over. Did you say that if we can operate under seamless summer option, that our in-school students will have to go under the NSLP? No, I'm glad you clarified. So what we do know is that we cannot allow you to do programs that are not recognizable as USDA programs. And by that I mean that if you have your middle school, you decide that you might have a hybrid model, you have in-person learners, remote learners, you need to choose whether or not you would be serving them through school breakfast, school lunch, or under one of the seamless summer option or summer food service program. You would not be able to serve remote learners under summer and in-person under school breakfast, school lunch for a particular school. We are seeking clarification and guidance from USDA whether we could allow you to operate programs, different programs in different school buildings, but we do know that within a school building right now, that has to be the same model. And again, as of December 31st, you're still switching to, you're still under operating school breakfast, school lunch as the authorizations stand now, or unless the funding runs out sooner. Another question, and this one I actually might be able to answer, is we are doing nope, I don't think I'll be able to answer this. So we are doing half days in school. Will the snack program be allowed to be distributed during the day? So in terms of the after school snack program, if you are operating under school breakfast, school lunch, then that snack, I believe, is also under those meal service time waivers. And so you would be allowed to do that. We at the Department of Education would need to know if those kids are staying on site if you're serving them a snack and not allowing them to eat that snack while they are on site. We're going to need to better understand that. The intent is that when you serve these meals for the in-person learners and they're there learning, these meal snacks are there to support their academic school day. And so we want to be able to make sure that they have the opportunity to consume them. If the child is in person for the morning and then returns home for remote learning for the rest of the day, you could certainly provide them with that lunch and snack on the way out the door to be able to be consumed during that learning day, whether it's remote or not. So we have what I think is a unanimous statement here, in that this is all very confusing. And so we absolutely understand that. It's very, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's very unprecedented for USDA to go to press prior to issuing any of the nationwide waivers or any waiver authorities to the state agencies. Typically, when in more typical times, we would get the information ahead of time and be able to analyze it, look through it, respond, ask USDA for some clarification and for some guidance prior to it really being released publicly. That's not how it worked in this case. So we are doing our very best to try and sort through this. And as I said, we have quite a few questions into USDA. We know that this is needs to move very quickly, and we have a lot of unanswered questions in order for us to be able to allow you guys to opt into some of these flexibilities. Is there any indication about the until funds run out statement as to the possibility of it running out? If I could see into the future, I would absolutely answer that, but I can't. So USDA has put that it's till December 31st or until the funding runs out. There has been no other clarifications around that, nor has there been any clarifications around when a state might be notified. If the funds are close to running out, we really don't have the answers to that, and I'm not sure we'll get the answers to that. I think it's, you know, it's a congressional appropriation, and so they have as much money as they have.
So just with the funds running out and that piece, again, that is all under the fact that if with the allowability to serve under the summer food service program and SSO, where you're getting reimbursed for all of the meals at the free rate for the meals that you're serving. It's not free, reduced, and paid. You have a potential to serve on the weekend. You're serving any child 18 and younger. So yes, there is unknown when the funds are going to run out for that option. What we do know, again, is that you need to get approved for the National School Lunch Program, School Breakfast Program, get those USDA waivers in that we issued 2 Fridays ago, and to be able to feed your remote learners, to be able to feed under hybrid. And that is the guidance we are given. We want to get you approved for what we do know. So you need to get the paperwork and those applications done. And as soon as we know more information about the feeding under SSO and SFSP, that will be released. And as far as that running out, you will always have the opportunity to continue with the National School Lunch Program, School Breakfast Program. It's just taking away the opportunity to feed under the regulations of summer, which is all kids 18 and younger, the weekends, basically really increasing access to those meals. But okay.
Yeah, well said, well put, Fanula, thank you. So I'm gonna come back to yours, Adam, because it's going to give me a segue into promoting next week's town hall. But so I do sympathize with Diane's question here around parents calling and asking why they were being charged for their meals when they're hearing on the news that the meals are free through December 31st. We absolutely sympathize with you. We also have no lack for phone calls and emails on our end around this. And it is an unenviable position to be in. What I can tell you is that our USDA Northeast Regional Office for Food Nutrition Services has indicated that this question around when these waivers can be considered in effect, so whether or not we are allowed to go retroactive back to either the date that the nationwide waivers were issued of August 31st, or whether we can go back to the beginning of the school year, or whether we will not be able to do any of those things. That is all part of the questions and answers that are in clearance, including, we were told, information and guidance around how to handle household charges that have already been paid and collected. So right now, we don't have the answer for you until USDA tells us, and we really apologize for not having more information. We wish we had the answers. So I'm going to take this last question from Adam, which is talking about commodity distribution. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to promote our town hall for next week. We are going to be talking very specifically around USDA foods and entitlement funds, which I'm sure you're curious about. So I want to do a little bit of foreshadowing for that so that you join us next week. Seamless summer option does count towards your commodity entitlement dollars. The summer food service program does not in the same way. And so that is a very complex question, but in terms of school breakfast, school lunch, and SSO, we might be able to cover a little bit around SFSP if we receive some additional guidance, but we will certainly be covering USDA foods next week on our town hall. We were going to do that this week before Monday happened, and so we ended up needing to reshuffle that and turn this into more of an interactive, less round foods at this moment, or USDA foods at this moment. With that, I know we started a few minutes late, so we ran over a few minutes late. Certainly keep submitting your questions. If you look at the registration for these town halls, you will also see the link to submit questions ahead of time. Please, please, please submit them there. We look at those regularly. That is what is also going to help us know which questions we continue to need USDA guidance for. So thank you all for everything you're doing. I think special thanks to my team for hanging in there and going through this, because it is definitely, they're working very, very hard to make sure that these programs can work for everybody involved. So thank you all. Hopefully we'll have more information to share soon. With that, Michelle, we can wrap up.
Great. I'm just going to remind the audience that these meetings are occurring at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. weekly. Please disregard the reminder notice that indicates the wrong time zone. I did send an email out with correction to everybody who was registered, but I just want to remind you, you will get a reminder an hour before the event starts, but just keep in mind on your calendar that these are 2 to 3. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.